Welcome to Life Stories, where a billionaire's silence is shattered by a 10-year-old boy asking a waitress to dance. What happens next? It doesn't go viral. It doesn't spark outrage. Instead, it unravels everything a powerful man thought he knew about love, dignity, and what it truly means to lead. This isn't just about class or race. It's about the quiet revolutions that begin in the most unexpected places. A dinner table, a pair of trembling legs, a woman who dares to say no. Stay with us, because this story will move you, challenge you, and, if you're willing, change the way you see power, parenting, and what it means to truly follow. Let's begin. The Sterling Room wasn't a restaurant. It was a shrine. Mahogany-paneled walls soaked in decades of whispered deals and veiled betrayals. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen rain over white linen tables where wine cost more than rent. And tonight, Daniel Whitmore, the tech billionaire who'd once been called the emperor of algorithms, broke a personal rule by bringing his son into it. 10-year-old Caleb sat beside him, his small frame stiff in a custom navy blazer, legs bound in gleaming orthopedic braces. The boy hadn't said much since they arrived. He rarely did. Not since the accident that left him partially paralyzed, and his mother, Daniel's wife, buried 6 feet beneath an angel-shaped headstone in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Daniel sipped his scotch neat, eyes darting between the menu and his vibrating phone, pretending not to notice the silence that surrounded their table like a noose. Wealth had taught him to recognize discomfort, but never how to dismantle it. And then, as if pulled by a force outside logic, Caleb rose. The sound of his braces screeching against marble halted conversations. Forks froze midair. Heads turned. "Excuse me," the boy said, his voice soft but clear. "May I have this dance?" He was holding out his hand, not to a classmate or to some giggling debutante, but to Janelle Carter, the only black waitress in the Sterling Room's entire staff. Her apron was dusted with flour, her hair tied back in a bun so neat it looked sculpted. For a moment, she thought she misheard him. Behind her, Manager Blake's voice cracked through the spell. "Miss Carter, please return to your station." Daniel stood up too fast. "Caleb, sit down." It came out, clipped, rehearsed, like everything else he said to the boy. Janelle hesitated, caught between obedience and something deeper, a flicker in the boy's eyes. It wasn't pity or whim. It was yearning. She removed her apron. "I can't dance in uniform," she said gently, and took his hand. The piano, sensing something unspeakable, drifted into a soft melody. As they began their slow, painful steps, people watched not out of admiration but out of disbelief. Caleb dragged one leg across the floor, his body trembling with the effort. Janelle matched his pace, not correcting, not guiding, only following. "He's humiliating himself," someone whispered. "No," Daniel whispered back to no one. "He's leading." A memory flared, his wife dancing barefoot in the kitchen with Caleb. "It's not about precision," she had said. "It's about presence." Blake stormed toward Daniel. "This is inappropriate. She'll be disciplined immediately." But Daniel wasn't listening. For the first time in 2 years, Caleb wasn't being pitied or protected. He was participating. And in that fractured, fragile moment, something more than pride stirred in Daniel's chest. Something like regret. When the dance ended, Janelle bowed slightly. "Thank you for asking me, Mr. Whitmore," she said as if he were a man and not a boy. "It was an honor." She turned to go. "Wait," Daniel said. His voice was quieter than he intended. "What's your full name?" "Janelle Carter." He pulled a business card from his jacket. "My office. Tomorrow, 10. Janelle took it without expression, but her hand trembled slightly. "Dad," Caleb asked when she left, "why did you do that?" Daniel didn't answer. Because the truth would have exposed him, that in all his millions, he had no idea how to help his son feel whole again. The next morning, Janelle stood in the marble lobby of Whitmore Tech HQ, painfully aware that her second-hand blouse cost less than most people's cufflinks in this building. She signed in, ignored the receptionist's narrowed gaze, and took the elevator to the 18th floor, where a woman named Miss Avery Winters waited. "He offered you a job, didn't he?" Avery asked bluntly as they walked through glass-walled hallways. "And you said yes?" "I said nothing yet." "You should. People like us don't get second chances here." "People like us?" Janelle asked, her voice dry. "You know what I mean," Avery replied, not unkindly. Inside his office, Daniel faced the skyline like it owed him something. When he turned, his expression was unreadable. "Miss Carter, please." Silence stretched between them. A test. She'd seen it before. He wanted her to talk first, to apologize for existing in his space. She didn't. "Education?" he finally asked. "Bachelor's in Child Development from NYU. Master's in Special Education. Incomplete." Daniel's brow arched. "Why didn't you finish?" "My sister got sick. Someone had to earn money." He tapped a folder on his desk. "I did some digging. You co-founded a community program." "Next step," she confirmed. "Dance therapy for disabled kids. With no funding." Daniel leaned forward. "Work for me. With Caleb." "As a waitress?" "As someone who made him smile." Janelle stood. "No." His expression faltered. "No, I don't work for people who see me as a solution they can purchase." "You'd solve your financial problems." "I'm not a problem solver. I'm a builder. And your son doesn't need to be fixed. He needs to be seen." She took out a card. "Next step. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. First class is free." As she walked out, Avery stared at her like she was a storm in a summer suit. "You just turned down Daniel Whitmore." Better that than become his property. The following week, a Bentley pulled up outside an old community gym in the Bronx. Monica, Janelle's sister, peeked through the blinds. "That car doesn't belong here. He won't come in." "He will," Janelle replied. "Caleb's in the back seat." The door opened. Caleb stepped out. Then, to Monica's absolute shock, Daniel followed. No suit, no tie, just a man looking uncertain of how to belong. Inside, the children danced, not in unison, not with grace, but with something far more powerful: joy. Caleb stared, unsure. "Would you like to join?" Janelle asked. Caleb nodded, then turned to his father for permission. Daniel hesitated, and then said something he hadn't said in years. "Go ahead. I'll be right here." Have you ever witnessed a moment that quietly shattered your assumptions about someone? Could you forgive a man who once saw people as tools, now trying to become human again? As Caleb takes his first step into chaos, what Daniel discovers behind the curtain will rewrite everything he thought he controlled and reveal just how carefully Janelle planned his awakening. Caleb moved differently now. His steps were uncertain, but they were his. No one held his arms. No one pushed from behind. Around him, the kids at Next Step danced with wild abandon, wheelchairs spinning, prosthetic legs tapping, walkers weaving through rhythms only they could hear. And standing at the edge, Daniel Whitmore had never felt so irrelevant in his own son's story. He stood awkwardly next to Monica, who offered him a chair but not comfort. She had that look, sharp, guarded, a woman who'd learned too early not to trust men in expensive shoes. "This isn't therapy," he muttered, almost defensively. Monica tilted her head. "No, it's something your money hasn't ruined yet." He didn't reply. He just watched Caleb laugh, a sound he hadn't heard in months. Then the door opened, and everything shifted. A woman walked in, older, elegant, leaning on a carved cane. Her salt and pepper braids were pinned into a crown, and her eyes scanned the room like a general entering battle. The children ran to her. She knew them all, hugged them, teased them. Then her gaze locked on Daniel. "Mr. Whitmore," she said without warmth. "I'm Dr. Clarice Benton. We've spoken before. Well, you mostly ignored me." Daniel blinked. "You're the neuroscientist who submitted that research proposal, movement autonomy therapy, right?" "3 times," she said crisply. "3 times. Your foundation rejected it without reading beyond the executive summary." He swallowed. "I assumed it wasn't scalable. You assumed it wasn't profitable." Janelle appeared beside them, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "She oversees the research program here." Daniel turned. "This is your pilot?" "Our pilot," Janelle corrected. "Co-developed. Years of observation and theory. We just didn't have the luxury of getting noticed until your son stood up and asked me to dance." "You planned that," he said, voice low. "At the restaurant. The invitation? No. The response? Yes. I recognized a window. I walked through it. You used him." "I followed him," Janelle said, "the way no one else ever had." Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but before he could, a reporter's voice called out, too loud, too sudden. "Mr. Whitmore, what brings you to the Bronx today?" The cameras had arrived. 2 crews, lenses pointed, mics extended. One cameraman caught Caleb mid-spin with another child. The image would go viral by nightfall. Daniel turned to Janelle, his voice like ice. You orchestrated this. She didn't deny it. We published our first clinical data this morning. The press was invited. I won't be part of your publicity stunt. You already are. She led him into a side room, away from the cameras. The walls were covered with photos, dozens of children, each one labeled with a name, a mobility score, a date of progress. One frame remained empty. That one, she said, is the center we could build. With the right funding, we could serve 500 kids a year, not 50. Daniel studied the board, then turned to her slowly. You're not just a waitress. No, but you only saw that when I danced with your son. His eyes narrowed. You could have sent an email. I did. You didn't open it. And now I'm supposed to give you what you want because you shamed me in public? No, she said. You're supposed to do it because for the first time in your life, you saw your son choose something, and you didn't stop him. He flinched. Voices rose outside the door. A commotion. Monica burst in, breathless. It's Caleb. They ran back into the main room. The music had stopped. Caleb stood in the center, surrounded by a hushed circle of kids. One of his braces lay discarded on the floor. He was trying to balance on his own. Daniel started forward instinctively, but Janelle grabbed his arm. Wait! Caleb breathed in. His arms wavered. His legs shook. Then, inch by inch, he stepped. One, then another. He stumbled but didn't fall. The room exploded into cheers. The cameras flashed, but Daniel saw none of it, just his son, lit from within by something fierce and quiet and breathtakingly real. He wasn't supposed to do that, he whispered. He wasn't supposed to be able to, Janelle corrected. Not for another year, according to your top-tier specialists. Daniel turned to her, his voice cracked raw. Why didn't you just ask me again? After I ignored the proposal? She looked him in the eye. Because you only hear yes when it costs you something. Power, ego, reputation. The reporters moved in again. Someone asked about the funding, about the future, about Caleb's role in the program. Daniel raised a hand. For once, not to silence, but to speak. I've spent my life believing control was strength, he said. But today, my son taught me something else. What would you sacrifice if the lesson came not from your own wisdom, but from someone you underestimated? As Daniel faces a decision that could change hundreds of lives, including his own, everything he thought he knew about power is about to be tested. The next step won't be Caleb's alone. 6 months passed, and the sounds that once echoed off steel and silence were now replaced by rhythm and laughter. Where a broken boy had once hesitated to lift his foot, now stood a child who led a group of others across a floor built for every kind of step. The new Next Step Rehabilitation Center had risen in the heart of the Bronx, not a monument to wealth, but to will. It wasn't glossy or grand, but every corner breathed intention. The floors were sprung for joint sensitivity. The lights were soft and warm, not clinical. And every design choice had one common thread. Children had been asked what they needed, and for the first time, they had been listened to. Caleb wore a single lightweight brace now. He moved with a focused confidence, a rhythm entirely his own. That morning, he was leading a small group in a routine he had choreographed himself. 4 children, each with different mobility aids, mirroring his moves with fierce joy. Daniel stood at the back of the room, silent as usual, but he no longer looked out of place. His suits had been replaced by loose sweaters and soft-soled shoes. His briefcase now carried annotated medical journals and hand-drawn sketches of center expansions. He still controlled empires, but here, he followed. Janelle approached quietly, clipboard tucked under one arm. You're early, she said, not as a jab, but with a knowing smile. Caleb asked me to come watch, said he added a new spin at the end. Did you understand his metaphor for independence this time? She teased gently. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, sheepish. Almost. I think I've decoded about half his choreography. They watched as Caleb spun into a controlled pivot, caught a girl's hand, and lifted her slightly off her wheelchair's edge. The audience of parents and staff let out a soft gasp. His balance has improved dramatically. Daniel said, That's not balance, Janelle replied. That's trust. There was a pause between them, one not of awkwardness, but of gravity. Daniel finally turned. You never told me why you kept the proposal under my name when it was published. Because the system still listens to people like you before people like me, Janelle answered. We needed the paper to be read, not ignored. You could have published it under your own name now. She hesitated. We did. The revised study, peer-reviewed. You didn't notice? I've been busy learning about neural pathways and adaptive dance floors, Daniel said. Turns out humility is time-consuming. Janelle laughed softly, then grew quiet. I never told you this, but the night I danced with Caleb, I wasn't supposed to be working. Daniel frowned. I had already quit. That was my last shift. I stayed because something told me if I walked out that door, I'd miss something bigger than a paycheck. He looked at her for a long time. You changed my son's life. She shook her head. Caleb changed his own life. I just followed. The ceremony began with a simple speech from Monica, thanking the donors, the families, the volunteers. But it was Caleb who stole the room. He walked to the mic. No script, no prep, just him. I used to think I was broken, he began. People always tried to fix me. They talked about what I couldn't do. But when I came here, no one tried to fix me. They just asked me what I wanted to try. And I wanted to try dancing, even if I wasn't good at it, even if I fell. He paused, scanning the audience. And then I got better, not because someone told me how to move, but because they moved with me. Tears pricked Daniel's eyes, but he didn't wipe them away. He let them fall. After the ceremony, as the children ran, rolled, hobbled, skipped through the courtyard, a reporter approached Daniel again. Mr. Whitmore, this is the most uncharacteristic project your foundation has funded. What made you choose this? Daniel looked at Janelle, then at Caleb helping a smaller boy out of a walker. Because I thought I was helping him, he said. But I was the one who needed help. I spent years trying to control his future. Turns out the bravest thing I ever did was learning how to follow. The reporter blinked, startled. Would you say this experience changed your values? No, Daniel replied. It reminded me I had some. Later that evening, after the applause had faded and the balloons had wilted in the heat, Janelle found Daniel in one of the side rooms, staring at the wall of framed photos. Children who had come and gone. Some had made huge strides. Some still struggled. One frame remained empty. We're saving that one, he asked. For someone who hasn't found us yet, she said. Daniel glanced at her. And after all this, what about you, Janelle? What's your next step? She looked around the building they had all fought for, then down at her calloused hands. I don't know. Maybe rest. Maybe write again. Maybe teach. But this was never about me. It was always about giving kids a space where they're not asked to be less than they are. He nodded. You know, I was ready to buy you out the day after that dinner. I had the offer written, lawyers on standby. All I saw was a woman who didn't know her place. And now? Now I know you were never out of place. I was. She smiled. Took you long enough. Outside, Caleb was dancing again, this time with no brace, just a soft shoe and an open sky. The music wasn't loud, but it filled the air like a promise. Daniel stood beside Janelle, watching his son twirl, stumble, laugh, and rise again. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like an outsider in his own life. He didn't feel powerful or helpless. He just felt present. What did this story awaken in you? Did a particular moment resonate with your own life journey? Comment 100 if you love the story. Tell us, which country are you watching from? Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of first steps. Thank you for watching Life Stories.